The sun rose over the endless desert, painting the sand in gold and red. Heat shimmered above the ground, and the wind whispered across the dunes. Cole Harper tightened his hat and shaded his eyes as he scanned the horizon. He had been riding for hours, guiding a small herd of cattle along a dusty trail. When a distant cry carried on, the wind caught his attention. It was faint, almost lost among the sighing currents, but something in it made his chest tighten. Cole had grown up in the rugged lands of the Southwest, where danger and survival often walked side by side. He knew every ridge, canyon, and hidden spring. But today, the desert felt different. There was a tension in the air, a feeling that trouble was coming. He shifted in the saddle and listened. The cry had stopped, but the unease remained. A few days earlier, a traveler had arrived at the small settlement near the canyon. She spoke hurriedly to the townsfolk about a young Apache warrior woman named Nayeli, who had been captured by a man named Grady Malone. Malone was known for his cruelty. Settlers whispered about him in hushed voices, telling stories of how he tracked his targets like a shadow and showed no mercy. Nayeli had been brave, skilled, and clever a warrior in her own right. Cole had heard of her courage, and a memory stirred within him. He remembered the day he had crossed paths with her while defending a small caravan from outlaws. Nayeli had fought with a fierceness that surprised even him, and her sharp mind had helped him escape a dangerous trap. He could not ignore her plight. Cole knew the desert would test him. The sun would scorch, the sand would shift beneath his horse's hooves, and cliffs would rise like walls against the sky. But he also knew the desert could be an ally for those who respected it. He adjusted the saddle and nudged his horse forward, leaving the familiar trails of the settlement behind. With every mile, the world of the townsfolk faded, replaced by the raw, untamed beauty of the wilderness. The wind tugged at Cole's coat and hat as he rode. He paused at a narrow ridge, peering down into a valley where the shadows of rock formations stretched long and dark. He could see faint tracks in the sand, the kind that told stories if one knew how to read them. Malone's tracks were fresh, but haphazard, as if he had rushed without care. Cole studied them closely. He could tell where the horses had stumbled, where Malone had stopped and looked around, perhaps sensing someone might be following him. Cole's eyes narrowed. This would not be easy. As he rode deeper into the desert, the sun climbed higher. The heat pressed against him like a living thing. He drank sparingly from his canteen, aware that every drop mattered. He paused under a lone mesquite tree, its leaves casting a small shadow. Cole tied his horse and rested for a moment, listening to the desert's whispers. Sand drifted lazily across the ground, and a hawk circled above, its sharp cries echoing against the cliffs. Cole thought about Nayeli, how she had faced danger without hesitation, how she had saved him when he had been in trouble. He owed her this effort, not for reward or fame, but because it was the right thing to do. Hours passed, and the desert seemed endless. Cole had faced long rides before, but this one felt different. Each step of his horse's hooves on the hard-packed sand echoed in his mind, reminding him that every mile brought him closer to both danger and hope. He followed the tracks that led toward a narrow canyon, where the shadows deepened and the air grew cooler. The canyon walls rose steep and unyielding on either side, like the teeth of a giant beast. Cole's instincts told him that Malone might have taken refuge here, using the cliffs to hide his camp and protect his prisoner. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the canyon floor, Cole reached a small ledge overlooking a flat area below. Smoke curled faintly into the sky. A camp. Malone's camp. Cole crouched low, studying the scene. There were a few men with him, perhaps hired hands, but their movements were clumsy and noisy. They did not notice the wind shift and the shadows that moved above them. Cole's mind worked quickly. He needed a plan, a way to rescue Nayeli without walking straight into a trap. He remembered the stories of the Apache, their knowledge of the land, their ability to move silently and unseen. Nayeli would not sit quietly, but she would also watch for the right moment. If he could reach her before Malone realized someone was coming, they might have a chance. Cole scanned the area, noting the piles of firewood, the scatter of supplies, and the rough barricades Malone had erected. He could see Nayeli, just barely, her head held high, despite being bound. Her eyes met his for a fleeting moment. Recognition passed between them. A spark of hope. The desert around them seemed to hold its breath. Cole waited until the sun was low, when shadows could hide movements and the heat would keep others drowsy. He knew he had only a small window to act. As he prepared to descend into the canyon, memories of past rides, past battles, and past rescues filled his mind. He thought about the responsibility he felt, not as a hero, but as someone who could not ignore injustice when it was so clear before him. Night fell, and the desert transformed. The temperature dropped, and the air carried a crisp chill. Cole moved carefully, each step measured, each sound controlled. The horses at the camp were tethered loosely, and the men were gathered around the fire, speaking quietly. Cole's horse followed his lead without hesitation, stepping lightly over rocks and sand. Every moment was tense. Every sound could betray him. As he drew closer, he noticed the shadows shifting in the camp. Nayeli had moved slightly, straining against her bindings, her determination clear even in the dim light. Cole's heart quickened. Soon, he would have to act. He had prepared for this, but the desert had a way of challenging even the best plans. He whispered a quiet encouragement to himself, feeling the wind against his face, feeling the vastness of the land around him. He was not alone. The desert, the night, and his resolve were with him. Then, a faint sound, a cough, a rustle of clothing alerted him to the presence of one of Malone's men moving toward the fire. Cole froze, blending into the shadows. His mind raced. The element of surprise was fragile. One wrong step could ruin everything. He waited, breathing slowly, counting the moments. The man moved away, distracted by something in the darkness. Cole exhaled silently, feeling the tension ease just enough to keep moving. Hours passed like this, each step bringing him closer to Nayeli. The desert around him was silent, but alive. Every rock and shadow, a potential ally or threat. Cole's senses sharpened, remembering every lesson the land had taught him. He could hear the faint sound of water dripping from a rock ledge, smell the desert sage in the cool night air, feel the soft grit of sand under his fingers as he moved. Each small detail mattered. Each small movement was a step toward freedom. By the first light of dawn, Cole had positioned himself near the edge of the camp. He could see Nayeli clearly now. She was watching, calculating, ready to move. If an opportunity came, Cole knew the real test was about to begin. The desert had given him a chance, the night had hidden him, and now, it was time to act. He adjusted his stance, tightened the reins, and prepared for the dangerous, daring moment when he would reach her and fight to bring her back to safety. The desert winds whispered around him, carrying the promise of a new day, a new hope. Cole Harper, cowboy and wanderer, was ready to face whatever the desert had in store, for the sake of courage, honor, and the brave Apache warrior who had already touched his life in ways he could not forget. The first light of dawn broke over the desert, spilling pale gold across the jagged rocks and sandy ground. Cole Harper crouched behind a large boulder, the rough stone pressing against his side. He could see the camp below, Malone's men still half asleep and careless, unaware that the shadow of a cowboy moved among the cliffs above them. His eyes met Nayeli's briefly, and she nodded almost imperceptibly. They understood each other without words. Freedom was close, but danger was closer. Cole waited for the right moment. He knew rushing in would be foolish. Malone was clever and cruel, and one mistake could ruin everything. The desert had taught him patience, and patience was now his most valuable weapon. He studied the camp carefully. One of Malone's men was sharpening a blade. Another tended to a fire. Nayeli remained calm, her posture defiant even though she was bound. Cole felt a surge of admiration. She had faced worse than this and had survived. He silently promised himself that he would not fail her now. A plan formed in his mind, simple but risky. He would create a distraction, something that would draw the men away from Nayeli long enough for him to reach her. His eyes scanned the edge of the camp, where dry brush and small rocks lay scattered. Cole carefully picked up a loose stone and tossed it far enough to make a soft clatter. One of Malone's men looked up, irritated, and went to investigate. The firelight flickered across the canyon walls, and the camp shifted slightly in response to the noise. Cole seized the moment. He moved silently down a narrow ridge, each step measured, each footfall light on the sandy soil. His horse, trained for this kind of work, followed without hesitation. The closer he got, the more Cole could see Nayeli's determined eyes, the tension in her arms as she tested the ropes that bound her. Malone was still distracted by the minor commotion, pacing back and forth, unaware that freedom was sneaking into his camp. When Cole reached Nayeli, he crouched beside her, keeping his voice low. "We can leave, but we must be quick." Nayeli's eyes lit up with recognition, and a small smile touched her lips. She nodded, flexing her hands carefully to loosen the ropes. Cole handed her a small knife he carried for emergencies. With precise movements, she cut through the bindings, her hands steady despite the tense situation. As soon as she was free, Cole and Nayeli moved toward the shadow of a nearby rock formation. Malone's men were still distracted, but Cole knew their attention could return at any moment. They had to reach the cliffs beyond the camp, where the terrain was rough and uneven, perfect for slowing a pursuer. Cole whispered instructions to Nayeli, guiding her through the safest path, avoiding loose rocks and dry patches that could give away their position. The desert air was cool in the early morning, but the rising sun would soon bring heat that could be exhausting. Cole and Nayeli moved swiftly, yet carefully. The canyon around them was silent, save for the occasional cry of a hawk high above and the faint rustle of wind through the rocks. Each step brought them closer to freedom. But each step also carried the risk of discovery. Cole's senses were alert, his eyes scanning every shadow, every movement. Suddenly, a shout rang out behind them. One of Malone's men had noticed the missing prisoner. The chase had begun. Cole did not panic. He had faced danger before, and the desert was his ally. He led Nayeli across a narrow ridge, using the rocks and shadows to conceal their movement. They descended into a small ravine, the steep walls hiding them from view. Nayeli moved with agility and strength, her warrior training evident in every step. Cole admired her skill, knowing that together they had a chance to escape. Malone's men pursued, shouting orders and scanning the terrain. One tried to cut across the ridge to cut them off, but Cole anticipated the move. He and Nayeli doubled back through a hidden path, leading the pursuer into a small cul-de-sac of rocks. The man stumbled over uneven ground and fell, allowing Cole and Nayeli to gain distance. Cole felt a thrill not from danger, but from the satisfaction of using his knowledge of the land to protect someone else. Hours passed as they raced through the desert. The sun climbed higher, and the wind grew stronger, carrying grains of sand that stung their faces. Cole encouraged Nayeli, reminding her to conserve energy and drink from the small canteen he carried. They moved together in harmony, their trust in each other growing with every step. The desert was harsh, but it was also a place of freedom. And Cole knew that if they could reach the hidden canyon oasis he had discovered years ago, they would have a safe place to rest. Finally, as the sun reached its peak, they spotted the oasis in the distance. Palms and small shrubs offered shade, and a clear pool of water promised relief. They made their way carefully, knowing Malone might still be pursuing, but hope lifted their spirits. Nayeli drank deeply from the water, her strength renewed, and Cole allowed himself a small smile. They had survived the first stage of the escape, but they both knew they could not relax completely yet. Malone had not given up. From a high ridge, he watched their progress, his face twisted with anger. But Cole had anticipated this. Using the natural barriers of the desert, he led Nayeli through narrow passages and hidden paths, making it impossible for Malone to follow directly. The desert worked in their favor, slowing the pursuer and giving them precious time. Cole felt a surge of gratitude for the land that had shaped him and guided him. As night approached, they reached a sheltered area of the oasis, hidden behind rocks and dense shrubs. Cole built a small fire, careful not to draw attention, while Nayeli rested and tended to minor scrapes and bruises. They shared a quiet meal, the silence between them comfortable and filled with the unspoken understanding of what they had endured. Cole looked at Nayeli and saw not just the warrior who had impressed him before, but a resilient, intelligent, and brave woman who had faced danger and refused to yield. "I thought I might be too late," Cole said softly, staring into the fire. Nayeli shook her head, her expression calm but firm. "You came. That is what matters. The desert tests many, but those who respect it can find their way. You respected it, and you respected me. That is enough." Cole nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He knew that respect, courage, and trust were more valuable than any treasure he had ever sought. They spent the night at the oasis, alert but at peace. The stars stretched across the sky, clear and bright above the desert, and the wind whispered gently through the palms. Cole and Nayeli shared stories of their lives, the lessons learned, the hardships faced, the moments of unexpected kindness and bravery. In the harshness of the desert, they found a brief sanctuary, a reminder that even in danger, there could be moments of quiet and hope. By morning, they prepared to leave the oasis. Cole had scouted the surrounding paths and knew the safest route to the nearest settlement, where they could regroup and plan the next steps. They moved carefully but with purpose, knowing the desert still held challenges but also opportunities for those who were attentive and brave. Malone would not give up easily, but Cole and Nayeli had proven that determination, courage, and knowledge of the land could overcome even the most ruthless of pursuers. As they rode side by side, the wind at their backs, Cole felt a sense of fulfillment. He had faced danger, relied on skill and instinct, and helped someone in need. Nayeli rode with confidence, her spirit unbroken, her gratitude clear in every glance. The desert stretched endlessly before them, but it was no longer a place of fear. It was a place of freedom, courage, and the promise of new beginnings. By the time they reached the outskirts of the settlement, the sun had risen fully, casting light across the land. Malone was nowhere in sight, defeated not just by the desert but by the courage and cleverness of those who refused to yield. Cole and Nayeli had survived, and their bond had been strengthened by the trials of the journey. They had faced fear and danger, but they had also experienced hope, trust, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. The story of the desert, of the chase, and of the rescue would remain with them forever. Cole Harper would continue his life as a wandering cowboy, carrying the memory of courage he had witnessed. Nayeli would continue her path as a warrior, free once more, knowing that even in the harshest lands, allies and hope could be found. Together, they had faced the desert winds, the harsh sun, and the shadow of a ruthless pursuer, and they had emerged victorious.